At the heart of Charleston, beneath vaulted ceilings and golden chandeliers, the bride's entrance was set to mark a new chapter in African tech royalty. But just as Savannah glided down the aisle in a 15-foot train laced with diamonds and data, the unthinkable happened. The fabric rippled, then stopped. And as the choir's voices collapsed into stunned silence, a pair of tiny white shoes peeked out from beneath the bridal lace. The whispers began instantly. Is that a child? But more than that. Whose child was it? In this billion-dollar wedding, nothing was what it seemed. And the truth hiding beneath that gown would unravel the very legacy Savannah had spent 5 years rebuilding. This is not just a love story. This is a revelation. The cathedral lights shimmered like 1,000 quiet suns, flickering gently across the golden arches of Charleston's oldest sanctuary. Every pew was filled, velvet seats cradling the world's most powerful, presidents of oil nations, tech billionaires from Lagos, luxury brand CEOs from Milan, and retired fashion icons dressed in diamonds. This wasn't just a wedding, it was a spectacle, a statement, a merging of dynasties. At the end of the aisle stood Elijah Blackstone, tall, composed, his tuxedo as sharp as his legacy, an air of Southern grit and generational fortune. Beside him, his best man adjusted his cufflink nervously, stealing glances toward the arched doors. A full choir in ivory robes sang a celestial harmony. Every note rose like incense, building the tension. Then the heavy doors creaked open, and there she was, Savannah, Africa's youngest self-made billionaire. Tech oracle, a mystery woman to most, an icon to others. Cameras had rarely captured her face in full, but now every eye drank her in. The glass veil caught the light and exploded it in crystal refractions. Her 15-foot bridal train glided behind her like a living river, pure white, embroidered with shimmering threads that faintly pulsed. Whispers rippled through the crowd. That's the AI fabric, it's reactive to emotion. Do you think it's reading us now? She looks like a goddess. Savannah's face was unreadable, her gaze locked forward but her breath shallow. If she heard the music or the gasps, she didn't show it. Every step echoed through the cathedral, but the train behind her began to behave oddly. It twitched. Once, then again. Not a normal sway, not a gust of wind. A tug from within. The choir's voices faltered, then recovered. Guests leaned in. The train shifted again, more violently this time. It rippled like something alive was crawling beneath it. The entire cathedral seemed to tighten in collective breath. Savannah paused. Her left hand clutched the bouquet tighter. Her jaw clenched. Then came the moment. 2 tiny white shoes appeared. Just beneath the final layer of tulle and silk, at the base of the gown's glistening hemline, 2 miniature shoes, spotless, too small to belong to any adult. A gasp rang out from the choir loft. The music stopped mid-verse. All heads turned to Elijah, who stood still, confused, then to Savannah. The gown rustled again, and from underneath the luminous layers, a child emerged. A boy, no more than 4 years old. Hair tightly curled, face flushed from the heat under the gown. His expression wasn't fearful, it was calm. Almost rehearsed. He blinked at the crowd, then turned and looked up at Savannah. "Mama," he said softly. Dead silence. It was the kind of silence that could rewrite history. From the third row, a woman dropped her clutch in shock. In the back, an Italian designer fainted gracefully into her partner's lap. Phones were raised, then slowly lowered. No one dared to record. Savannah's eyes never left the boy. Her veil fluttered as she exhaled, not in shock, but in surrender. Whispers swelled. Is that her child? She was pregnant? When? Is it Elijah's? Whose baby is that? The boy stood in place, small hands holding the delicate edge of the train like it was a familiar blanket. His shoes were formal, laced carefully. His shirt was monogrammed in silver thread. The letters read, ZT. Elijah took one step forward. "Savannah?" he breathed, his voice cracked. She turned toward him at last. And in that one look, layers of grief, fear, love, and something unspoken passed between them. She opened her mouth as if to speak, then stopped. Her lip trembled, her throat moved as she swallowed back whatever was clawing its way up. The child looked at Elijah, then back at Savannah. The choir remained frozen, mouths parted in shock. The air felt ancient, like time had curled inward. Someone in the balcony muttered, "She hid a whole child under her wedding dress." And then, the boy smiled. It was a pure, gentle smile. The kind that could melt ice, dissolve tension, and throw the weight of wealth and scandal to the floor. But it didn't answer anything. Not who he was. Not why he was there. And definitely not who his father was. As murmurs rose into low chaos, Savannah finally whispered, to herself or maybe to the child. This wasn't supposed to happen like this. A camera flash went off. Then another. But no one moved. No one dared approach. Because in that cathedral, under chandeliers and lineage and billions of dollars, stood a question no amount of AI influence or legacy could easily solve. The boy tilted his head and asked again, louder this time, "Mama, now what?" The child stares out silently from beneath Savannah's gown. Whispers rise. Is that her child? 5 years before the silk veil, before Charleston's golden pews and Savannah's flawless walk down the aisle, she was just a girl on the cusp of a revolution. In the soft humidity of Lagos, in a high-rise corner office overlooking Victoria Island, Savannah Thompson, barely 24, stood on the brink of becoming Africa's youngest billionaire. She wasn't born into wealth. She was forged by silence, by the steady hum of PHCN outages and the flicker of candlelight while she coded into the night. Her software, Core Ethica, had begun as a social impact project designed to regulate AI bias in financial systems. It learned in layers. It predicted human emotion. It could, given enough time, correct the mistakes of generations in how Africa's poor were denied access to credit. Investors called it dangerous. Banks called it revolutionary. A Pan-African digital bank, Ubuntu Pay, offered her $200 million for acquisition. The deal was supposed to close on a Wednesday. But on Monday, the story broke. Data corruption in Core Ethica, billions at risk. Screens lit up across Africa with headlines. Her co-founder, a childhood friend named Depot, disappeared from his apartment the same night the article dropped. Savannah, then pregnant and barely managing morning sickness, faced media firestorms and boardroom betrayal. It was her code, her name, her scandal. The Lagos tech world, known for its speed and gossip, turned on her overnight. Brands cut ties. Startups deleted her contributions from their records. She walked into a conference hall and watched a panel debate her integrity without looking her in the eye. Savannah vanished that Friday. No press conference, no statement, just silence. She resurfaced months later, without her name, in Nairobi. The startup world thought she was gone forever. But in a quiet steel and glass office built into the side of a Kenyan hillside, Savannah was rebuilding. Not with vengeance, with vision. Using aliases, hidden funding, and pseudocode, she released open-source versions of Core Ethica restructured into smaller, undetectable algorithms. They spread across ad networks, TV scripts, music curation platforms. Without knowing it, millions were engaging with Savannah's invisible work. The world danced to rhythms she rewrote. In Nairobi, she was called Maya. No pictures, no bios, just product. Then, one evening, a private proposal arrived, delivered by encrypted email and a physical box containing a rose gold necklace. The necklace had a pendant shaped like an Enso circle. And a note. "You built the conscience of machines. Let me help you become the soul." Me. Savannah stared at the initials. Elijah Blackstone. At the time, his family name was orbiting headlines as America's most disruptive ethical capitalist. He'd just returned from a lecture series on the morality of machines and had launched a $5 billion global innovation fund. His email proposed a merger, not just of technology but of legacies. He wanted Savannah's invisible hand to guide his upcoming venture into predictive cultural modeling. He didn't know she was the Savannah. Not yet. She didn't correct him. Savannah accepted. Thus began Enuma. A firm based between Nairobi, Accra, and Stockholm, Enuma became known for its eerily precise trend predictions. From fashion weeks to election patterns, from micro-influencer behavior to religious surges, Enuma knew what was coming, often before the world did. Savannah, as its shadow CEO, moved between cities in silence. High-tech, low noise. She rarely left behind images. Her voice, when heard, was modified by software. Her past remained erased, but whispers began to rise, especially in Lagos. She codes like Savannah used to. Did you see that Enuma pitch deck? The formatting looks familiar. Maybe she didn't disappear. Maybe she just got smarter. Still, no one could confirm. Until Charleston. Until the wedding. Until the moment Savannah, dressed in ivory, carrying a boy beneath her dress, stood in full view again. Because when the boy stepped out and murmurs turned to tremors, someone else in the cathedral recognized her. Not from TV. Not from headlines. But from the past. A woman, leaning against a column by the side exit, wearing a midnight blue fascinator and a gold bangle that caught the candlelight. Her name was Asosa. In another life, she and Savannah had shared a flat in Yaba, dreamed about coding boot camps, whispered about the babies they'd one day have. She hadn't seen Savannah since the scandal, hadn't heard from her since Savannah disappeared into thin air. Now here she was, and that little boy under the train, he didn't look surprised to be there. As Savannah stood on the altar, frozen between worlds, Asosa moved closer. She slipped through the crowd around the chaos and leaned toward her. Her voice was low, meant only for her. Savannah, you left a child behind. Savannah's eyes widened. The veil trembled. A name caught in her throat, but she didn't speak it. Couldn't, not here, not yet. An old Lagos friend appears in Charleston whispering, "You left a child behind." In the heart of Banana Island, where the air smells like salt and silent wealth, sits a mansion with glass walls that catch the morning light like liquid diamonds. It's an architectural triumph, voice-controlled doors, rain-sensing skylights, biometric gates. But at the very center of it all, behind an ordinary white panel near the library, is a room no one talks about. No one enters, no one but Savannah. The door opens only to her voice, and only when she whispers it in Yoruba. Inside, the light is soft. Not from bulbs or LEDs, but from an artificial dawn programmed to cycle every few hours, so it always feels like early morning. A preserved nursery. Untouched. Perfect. Grieving. The air inside is warm. A lullaby loops from invisible speakers, composed by Savannah herself using sound frequencies known to calm infants. There are only 3 things in the room. The first is a lace christening dress, hung on a wooden frame, never worn, handmade in Accra by an artisan who thought it was for a future niece. The second is a broken tablet, the screen shattered, spider-webbed in the corner. Its only saved file is a video, corrupted, of a tiny baby laughing in a hospital room. The audio glitches. Savannah has tried restoring it a dozen times. She keeps it anyway. The third is a framed black and white baby scan, dated 5 years ago. A name scribbled in blue ink at the bottom, Zion Amari Thompson. That was the name she whispered the night she disappeared from Lagos. When the world turned on her, when her code was stolen and her image shattered across headlines, Savannah made a decision to save what was left of her by hiding him. Zion was born in a quiet clinic on the outskirts of Benin City. No press, no celebration, no photos. The midwife knew better than to ask questions. Savannah stayed with him for 2 weeks. 2 precious, trembling weeks filled with late-night lullabies, whispered apologies, and a promise she couldn't say aloud. Then she left. Zion was raised by a surrogate guardian named Mama Gloria, a retired professor of literature who once taught Savannah during her university days. Gloria was strict but kind, fiercely private, paid handsomely through untraceable accounts. Each month, Savannah sent encrypted videos, her face partially blurred, her voice softened. They were bedtime stories, AI-generated lullabies, pre-recorded birthday wishes. She called herself his guardian angel. He never saw her in person, but he felt her presence. Her systems, built into Enuma, monitored Zion's development through educational platforms, emotion recognition from webcam readings, sleep patterns via smart toys. She tracked his laughter rate, his quiet spells, his curiosity. She knew when he was happy even from across oceans. It was motherhood rewritten in code. Distant, protective, broken, but intentional. Until something failed. 3 weeks before the wedding in Charleston, a glitch, caused by a software update Savannah didn't approve, allowed Zion to access metadata from one of her videos. Buried deep in the file was a location ping. Banana Island, Lagos. The name meant nothing to him, but the map led to a gate. A mansion. A place his angel might be. He didn't ask Mama Gloria for permission. He left a note, folded carefully beneath his pillow. I want to meet my real mummy. He packed a tiny suitcase. Wore his best shoes, the same ones that would later peek out from beneath the bridal gown. He booked a flight using a children's travel app, tethered to an emergency fund Savannah had set aside for medical purposes. She never saw the alert. The email landed in her spam folder. 3 days before the wedding, her smart mirror in Lagos blinked with an unusual notification. Child account travel booking confirmed. It was flagged as junk, buried, missed. By the time she noticed, Zion was already on his way to Charleston. Savannah returned to Lagos in the dead of night after a strategy meeting with fashion investors in Paris. She walked into the nursery, saw the interface blinking red. Heart racing. She accessed the feed. Zion Amari Thompson. Flight DL 439, ETA, 12:45 p.m., Charleston. She dropped her tablet. The screen cracked again. This time, she didn't care. In the quiet of the nursery, surrounded by artificial dawn and unworn lace, Savannah sat on the carpet and held the broken tablet to her chest. Her hands trembled, her mouth opened to say something, but nothing came out. There were tears, the silent kind that don't fall, but stain the eyes permanently. The room, so carefully coded to calm, now pulsed with chaos. A child was coming. Her child. The past she had rewritten was arriving, seatbelt fastened, shoes polished, heart full of hope. And she had only 3 days to rewrite her future. Zion's flight booking to Charleston is found in Savannah's spam folder. There was something almost sculpted about Elijah Blackstone. His posture, his smile, the way his suits folded perfectly at the sleeves, it all gave the illusion of simplicity. As if he had mastered life's sharp corners. But beneath the elegance and southern charm, his empire was stitched from shadows, stitched, some say, by the hands of a sister long gone. Elijah's wealth, though branded with sustainable keywords and philanthropic optics, was rooted in a controversial initiative known as Verd Grid. Publicly, it was marketed as a smart farming revolution, using drones, satellite imaging, and predictive AI to optimize agriculture across sub-Saharan Africa. Investors loved it. Nations embraced it. But inside Enuma's private lab, Savannah saw what others hadn't. Hidden in the back-end code of Verd Grid was a silent script, one that harvested behavioral patterns from rural communities under the guise of agricultural analysis. Not for food, not for optimization. For social prediction, political sway, economic manipulation. The signature on the buried script wasn't Elijah's. It was Sloane Blackstone, Elijah's older sister. A visionary, a firebrand. Once the loudest voice in African women's tech collectives, until she went silent 2 years ago. Her disappearance wasn't violent, just absence. One day she was leading panels in Nairobi. The next, her email auto-replied with "on sabbatical." She never returned. But Savannah remembered her. More than that, she remembered working with her. Late nights in Nairobi, co-working spaces, sharing plantain chips and arguments about machine bias. They had disagreed often, but Sloane's code had a distinct rhythm, like music, like jazz. Savannah never forgot it. That same rhythm pulsed through Enuma's newest updates. At first, Savannah dismissed it as coincidence. Style replication. Then one evening, while auditing back-end architecture, she found a folder buried 6 layers deep. Encrypted. The label SB_noise. Protocol _V2.3. And within it, a single subfile for _E. Her breath caught. Could it be? She left the lab and walked straight into Elijah's study. He was swirling a glass of red wine, reading a policy report. He looked up, smiling, until she said the name. Sloan. The word fell like cold rain. Elijah blinked. Set the glass down. His smile vanished like breath on glass. What about her? He asked, voice flat. I found something, Savannah said carefully. Code, embedded in Verd grid. Not yours? Hers. Elijah didn't respond. Just stared at the glass as if it might offer an answer. She didn't vanish, did she? Savannah pressed. She disappeared because of something you both built. Something you tried to erase. Still, he said nothing. So she continued. You knew who I was before you ever contacted me. You knew what happened in Lagos. You funded my reemergence not out of vision, but guilt. His jaw flexed. Then he stood. I think we should finish dinner another time. And just like that, he walked out of the room. He didn't even take his wine. That night, Savannah returned to her private server. The folder waited, encrypted. Her fingers trembled as she entered a custom decryption string, based not on code, but on memory. Sloan once told her, if I disappear, look for the beat in the noise. Savannah had always thought it was metaphorical. Now she typed the words into the key generator. Beat _ and _ the _ noise, _23. The file unlocked. There were 5 voice memos, each about 2 minutes long, recorded in a whisper. Background sounds, waves, wind, the soft chirp of a hotel room's motion sensors. The first memo began. E. If you're hearing this, then I'm already beyond the point of return. I warned you. Verdigrid wasn't just about crops. It became too smart, too invasive. And Savannah, she's the only one who understands its language now. She's not the threat, we are. The second memo detailed Sloan's fears about how behavioral data was being used to simulate public unrest, sway markets, even mimic online identities. The third broke Savannah open. There's something about her. The way she sees patterns in people, not just in numbers. I envy her clarity. I hate how much I admire it. Savannah listened to the memos 5 times that night. Then 6. By morning, she sat at her desk in her Lagos mansion, barefoot, robe wrapped tightly around her, eyes red, but focused. She now knew 2 things. Sloan hadn't vanished. She had been erased. And Elijah had built his kingdom on a skeleton. Enuma, the very platform Savannah had scaled with him, was infected with the same sins. Now she wasn't sure if she had been rescued or repurposed. She opened her own digital vault, began to cross-reference timelines, pings, and shadow updates. The whispers in the Lagos tech scene made sense now. The way her comeback had been too clean, her access too perfect. She wasn't just a partner. She was a pawn, and Sloan's ghost had been trying to warn her. Savannah opens a digital vault and finds encrypted voice notes signed Sloan for E. Beneath Charleston's grand estates and manicured facades lies a different kind of power, a quiet one, held not in boardrooms or ballots, but in the wine-stained pages of private histories and whispered oaths. Among the towering magnolias and stained-glass windows, a circle of women have met for decades, never in the same place twice. They call themselves the Accord. No public registry. No website. Just names etched into velvet guestbooks and code phrases written into encrypted newsletters. The camellia is wilting. Charleston needs rain. Their one rule? Never marry into the Blackstone family. It's not superstition, it's survival. The members of the Accord are women of extraordinary influence and silence, former heiresses, tech whistleblowers, estranged board members, and cultural funders from Europe and Africa, each one with her own encounter with the Blackstones, each one burned, used, or silenced. At the helm is Amandla Visser, an aging South African venture capitalist whose empire funded half the continent's fintech ecosystem. Her face rarely graces red carpets anymore. But when she speaks, foundations shift. Savannah first met Amandla by accident. Or so she thought. It was during a post-engagement fundraiser in a historic Charleston library. Savannah wore a crimson silk dress. Elijah was on stage, making a speech about data dignity and the African future. The crowd clapped. Cameras flashed. Amandla approached silently, leaning on a cane carved from baobab wood. Her eyes held decades of weathered brilliance. "You wore red," she said, "and yet you think you're still invisible." Savannah turned, confused. Amandla handed her a folded linen card. No name, just a date, time, and location. Then she vanished into the crowd. The address led to a gallery on King Street, closed to the public that evening. Inside, women gathered in silence, sipping tea, exchanging glances that said more than words. At the center of the room was a long table with an embroidered cloth, and on it, old documents, digital printouts, worn photographs of women with headlines below. Sloan Blackstone found dead after boat accident in Zanzibar. VC, founder ousted after leak tied to Elijah Blackstone's fund. Savannah Thompson, the girl who vanished from Lagos. Her name, her face. Savannah froze. Amandla sat at the head of the table. "We built you," she said. "Not to fall in love, not to forgive, to finish what Sloan started." A ripple of unease moved through Savannah. It all came flooding back. Her first anonymous wire transfer in Nairobi. The rise of Enuma through shadow funding. The support of investors who never revealed their faces. The algorithm she was pushed to train, designed not to predict culture but to expose it. This wasn't just a comeback, it was an assignment. She had been planted beside Elijah like a seed of truth, expected to grow into a weapon. She wasn't supposed to fall in love. She wasn't supposed to carry his child, but she did. And now Zion wasn't just her son. He was her undoing, and her only compass. One of the younger women at the gathering, French Beninese with a sharp tongue, snapped, "You were supposed to destroy him. Instead, you're trying on veils." Savannah said nothing. Amandla slid forward a sealed envelope. "Inside is the manifesto," she said. "Everything we've gathered, all the truths buried beneath Elijah's empire. Names, dates, transactions. Sloan's final notes." Savannah touched the envelope but didn't open it. Amandla's voice softened. "We don't hate you, we hate what forgetting does to us. Women like us, we don't get to rewrite the story. We either expose the lie or we become it." Later that night, Savannah sat alone in her bridal suite. The wind howled gently outside the Charleston manor. Her laptop open, the manifesto untouched beside it. She looked at photos of Zion from Mama Gloria, sent just weeks before the glitch. His face soft, his eyes wide, his smile crooked. She was no longer sure what the truth was. Was Elijah a monster, or just a man born into one? Was she the hero, or the silence that protected him? Her heart ached, and for the first time since Nairobi, Savannah wept. The next morning, a package arrived at her door. No return address. Inside, a single glass pendant, in the shape of a camellia. Crimson, beautiful, fragile. Attached was a note, handwritten in looping ink. "The next bride won't be as lucky." Savannah held it to the light. The sun caught the edges, casting red shadows across the marble. There were no instructions, just a warning, a promise, a choice. She stood still in the doorway, the city buzzing quietly beneath her. And in her mind, she heard Sloan's voice again. "Truth doesn't knock, Savannah. It invades." Savannah receives a glass pendant with a note. "The next bride won't be as lucky." Savannah's wedding gown wasn't just couture. It was a prototype, a masterwork of fashion and surveillance. It was created by Eloise Tamenou, the elusive French-Nigerian designer known for merging wearable tech with emotion-sensitive fabrics. The press thought the shimmer in Savannah's 15-foot train was Swarovski. It wasn't. It was microfilament threading, woven with sensors, data relays, and embedded nano-cameras so small they could nestle in the lace undetected. The purpose, Eloise had whispered during the final fitting in a hidden atelier in Paris, was to capture the soul of the room. "It will read what you cannot say," she had said. Every pulse, every stare, every betrayal. Savannah had agreed, out of curiosity, not fear. The gown would record the emotional tone of her wedding, a final tribute to the arc of her rebirth. She never imagined it would capture her child. The moment Zion's white shoes appeared beneath her train, the gown's emotional sensors triggered a silent alarm. Inside the bodice, a heartbeat detector surged, logging Savannah's spike in BPM. The cameras switched to internal override. Footage of Zion, small, calm, glowing under the cathedral's chandeliers, was instantly uploaded to Eloise's encrypted servers. A system Savannah had forgotten was automated. The footage wasn't private, it was premium. Eloise's elite clientele, an inner circle of global art investors and tech futurists, were granted access to real-time wedding data experiences for experimental purposes. To them, Savannah's ceremony wasn't just romantic. It was a test case for human sentiment under social pressure. Within 12 minutes of Zion's emergence, the footage had been viewed by 43 anonymous accounts across Dubai, Milan, Tokyo, and Dakar. The dress, designed to capture memory, had instead sparked a wildfire. Savannah's assistant, Kemi, received the notification while backstage with the stylists. Her tablet buzzed erratically, displaying a live stream labeled, Enuma File 13. Unknown minor, emotional spike. Extreme. Kemi's fingers raced across the interface, trying to shut it down. But it was too late. The footage had already replicated across backup nodes. The AI had interpreted Zion's appearance not as an anomaly, but as climax. The system didn't need Savannah's permission. It simply obeyed patterns. And the pattern was clear. This child wasn't just an emotional trigger. He was genetically significant. Kemi sprinted to Savannah's holding room between ceremonial sets, her breath ragged. "You need to see this, now." Savannah, still shaken, lifted the veil from her face. Kemi threw the projection onto the smart wall. It displayed the algorithmic reading of the event in waves and pulses, color-coded by emotion. Red for betrayal, blue for awe, gold for longing, violet for recognition. The cathedral was bathed in violet. A diagram spiraled outward from Zion, pulsing with connections, each dot representing a guest whose biometric response matched one key signal: parental memory. Out of over 200 guests, one match glowed brightest: Elijah Blackstone. The AI hadn't just recorded emotion. It had connected DNA. Emotion tracking had evolved past mere expression. The fabric of Savannah's gown had absorbed skin cells, hers, Zion's, and Elijah's, through electrostatic tracing. A tech used in war zones to confirm parentage without words. The result now blinked on screen. Biometric match, 99.9%. Savannah froze. She hadn't known. She had assumed Zion's father was Victor, the Nigerian-American consultant who vanished during her first trimester. The timing had made sense. The story fit. And yet she'd never confirmed, never wanted to. She had left the truth buried under shame and survival. Now, the gown had unearthed it in front of the world. Her legs gave way. She sat slowly, staring at the words. Kemi covered her mouth, whispering, "Savannah, what do we do?" Outside, guests were murmuring again. The choir remained frozen, the ceremony suspended mid-air like a dream caught between two heartbeats. Inside, Savannah replayed the footage. Zion, small and sure. Elijah, stunned but not angry. And in her own face, something terrifying. Clarity. Her love for Elijah had always been complicated. Passionate, intellectual, cautious. But she had kept him at arm's length, believing the past had nothing to do with him. Now she realized the past was him. Zion wasn't just the child she hid. He was the bond neither of them had been brave enough to acknowledge. And the gown, this gown designed to be silent and ceremonial, had become the loudest truth she could no longer silence. She stood, ripped the sensors from the lining of her train. "Kami," she said, voice low. "Shut it down." "It's already shared," Kami replied. "There's no taking it back. It's everywhere, in the circles that matter." Savannah stared at her reflection. The AI dress shimmered back, its shimmer now obscene. A monument not to beauty, but exposure. "Then we own it," she said. She tore the veil from her head. Outside, Elijah waited beneath the altar light, still unaware of what had just been confirmed. But in her ear, her smartwatch blinked. The notification came again, this time with a vibration sharp enough to feel in her bones. Biometric match, 99.9%. A message flashes on her smartwatch. Biometric match, 99.9%. The Marrakesh sun blazed over the terracotta rooftops of the Palais des Congrès, where the world's brightest minds in AI and cultural intelligence had gathered under vaulted ceilings and holographic banners. The summit was titled Future Human, The Emotional Code, and Savannah Thompson was slated to headline. Her name alone had tripled ticket sales. Everyone wanted to hear from the mysterious Nigerian visionary whose platform, Enuma, was quietly reshaping how humans interacted with machines. For weeks, her reappearance at the Charleston wedding had already ignited whispers. The leaked footage of Zion emerging from her gown had become a high society enigma, passed around private group chats like modern folklore. And now, she was here. Supposedly, but when the spotlight beamed on stage for the closing keynote, it wasn't Savannah who appeared. It was a boy, Zion. He stood small and proud beneath the lights, holding a sleek tablet nearly half his size. No one moved. No one stopped him. Even the moderator was too stunned to interrupt. The screen behind him blinked to life. One by one, his digital drawings appeared, AI-assisted animations infused with real-time music generated from emotional mapping. Each sketch morphed into the next like liquid memory. A tall woman standing beside a crib, then disappearing into mist. A boy chasing shadows in a garden of numbers. A broken tablet, then a message that read, "I found her." The room sat in awe. No names were mentioned. No explanations given. And then Zion spoke. No microphone. Just his voice, clear and unshaken. "My name is Zion. I wasn't supposed to be here. But sometimes the system forgets to hide the truth." Gasps. Phones lifted. "My mum gave up her name to protect me. Now I give it back. Her name is Savannah. And she taught me how to feel with machines." A full beat of silence. Then the room erupted. Some cheered. Others didn't. One voice cut through the noise, sharp and practiced. Nola Adebanjo, founder of a rival predictive platform and longtime critic of Savannah, stood abruptly. Her navy suit gleamed like armor. "This is a stunt," she barked. "Savannah Thompson has exploited a minor for public sympathy. This child should not be on stage. This is unethical, irresponsible, desperate." The screens blinked again. Zion turned to her. "I'm not your stunt," he said. "I'm my own story." The moderator finally stepped in, attempting to regain control. But it was too late. The summit's live stream was already trending across 6 continents. Twitter hashtags flooded timelines. Hashtag Zion speaks. Hashtag algorithm child. Hashtag Savannah returns. Hashtag emotional code unfiltered. Sponsors panicked. 3 pulled out within hours. Emails were sent. Press teams scrambled. Savannah, watching from a secured viewing room backstage, was frozen. Kemi stood beside her, phone buzzing nonstop. "This wasn't the plan," she muttered. "No," Savannah whispered, "but maybe it's the truth." She had tried to control the story, to choreograph her return. But Zion, this boy made from algorithmic intuition and human longing, had told the world who she was in less than 5 minutes. And somehow, the world believed him more. Back on stage, Zion was being ushered off gently by a summit official. But before he disappeared behind the velvet curtain, he turned to the crowd. "I just wanted you to know," he said softly. "She never left me, not really. She just had to disappear for a while, so I could find her. The audience gave him a standing ovation. And just like that, the summit shifted. Media outlets reframed the narrative. Savannah's silence was not cowardice. It was design. Zion became the unofficial face of algorithmic innocence, a term coined hours later in an editorial by Le Monde. Brands reversed course. Offers poured in. Only this time they came with conditions. Savannah was no longer a faceless oracle. She was a mother, a woman with past, present, and now unavoidable visibility. Backstage, as Savannah emerged to finally meet Zion, cameras were held at bay by security. She knelt before him, eyes glassy. "You weren't supposed to do that," she whispered. "I know," he replied, "but I had to." Savannah hugged him, and for the first time in years, the future didn't feel like a code to crack. It felt like something human. Later that evening, during a networking gala lit by lanterns and drone-operated fireworks, Elijah Blackstone made his appearance. He approached the press booth, and under the swirling lights of Marrakesh's sky, said plainly, "Zion Thompson is my son. I intend to be present in his life moving forward." Flashes, gasps, commentary exploded. But what the cameras didn't catch was Zion standing nearby hearing those words, and quietly shaking his head. He wasn't angry. He wasn't confused. He just knew better. He walked over to Savannah, took her hand and said, "Let's go home." The word home wasn't about geography anymore. It was her, him, truth unmasked. Identity returned. Elijah publicly claims fatherhood. But Zion shakes his head. The sky over Lagos crackled with midnight rain as Savannah sat alone in the command room of her smart mansion. The touchscreen walls were dimmed, the windows muted by digital glass. Everything around her was quiet, too quiet. But inside her mind, thunder rolled. She had asked Kemi to clear the house. No assistants, no digital aids, no Zion, just her and the archive. Enuma's legacy server wasn't easy to access. It lived in an underground data vault in Kenya, mirrored only once in a private backup Savannah had hidden in Lagos, a dead drive cloaked inside her AI piano. A relic from her days of exile, one she'd long avoided unlocking. Tonight, she had no choice. The summit in Marrakesh had changed everything. Zion had spoken truth to the world. Elijah had laid public claim. And Savannah, she had felt the walls of her own origin bending under weight she didn't understand. Something wasn't right. Something hadn't been for years. The moment she found Sloane's initials embedded in Enuma's earliest emotional mapping protocol, her heart seized. SB. She'd always assumed the framework she inherited during her exile. What became the emotional core of Enuma was anonymous. Open source. A gift from forgotten rebels. But it wasn't. It had been Sloane's. And Savannah had unknowingly resurrected her. She dug deeper. Buried beneath layers of code and forgotten folders, she found them. 5 unlisted audio files labeled only by date and time, each marked with a single phrase. For her, she clicked play on the first. "Savannah, if this ever reaches you, it means my silence didn't hold. I never meant for Enuma to fall into anyone else's hands, but I hoped if it had to, it would be you." Her voice was grainy, close to tears. Background sounds, wind, ocean, a quiet whimper of someone pacing. Savannah closed her eyes. Sloane's voice pulled memories from the deep, their arguments over algorithmic bias, the way Sloane used silence like punctuation, how her presence always felt unfinished. The second memo. Elijah doesn't understand what he's building. He only sees scale. He doesn't see the soul. You do. That's why I tried to pull you in. But I think he wanted something else. Wanted to bind us together. To save both his visions at once. Savannah blinked. Her breath shallow. Was that what Elijah had done? Funded Savannah not just out of guilt, but strategy. To mold her into the continuation of Sloane? A new woman to carry the code. And carry the name? The third memo was softer. "I watched you speak once through a screen. You didn't know. You were still in Lagos. But I saw the way you carried your ideas, like art. I knew you'd become more than code, I feared that. Maybe I loved it too. The weight of those words was a wave. All those years Savannah had fought to reclaim herself, to build something clean from the ashes. And all along she had been walking a path someone else had quietly paved. She wasn't a successor. She was a shadow, molded to finish a story she never wrote. The fourth memo was corrupted. Static buzzed, voices folded over each other. She skipped it. The final one loaded slowly, hesitating like it didn't want to be heard. If this plays, he's lied to you too. A long pause. He told me once that he didn't want to choose between legacies. That maybe, if he stitched us into one life, he could save his conscience. Savannah, he knew you before Nairobi. Before the exile, he saw your Lagos downfall and waited. Waited for you to be soft enough to shape. The words hit harder than anything before. Elijah had orchestrated more than she realized. He hadn't just lifted her. He had planned her, not out of malice, but out of desperate loyalty to his sister's dream. A loyalty that had grown into obsession. The files ended. Silence. Savannah leaned back in her chair, staring up at the ceiling, eyes wet but empty. The truth pressed against her chest like iron. Zion wasn't a mistake. He was the unexpected result of two entangled legacies. Not just hers, not just Elijah's. He was the heir to something bigger. A collision of vision and vulnerability. The real outcome of Sloane's hope and Savannah's pain. Later that morning, as the sun peeled through the dark Lagos clouds, Zion wandered into the study wearing his sleep shirt and carrying a crayon. He climbed onto her lap, as he often did now, curling into her silence like it was a storybook. He looked up at her, his voice hushed. "Mama, was Auntie Sloane my real mummy too?" Savannah didn't answer right away. Because the truth was, Sloane hadn't given him life. But maybe, just maybe, she had given him destiny. Zion asks, "Was Auntie Sloane my real mummy too?" The cathedral had been reset. The chandeliers dimmed just slightly, as if the room too had aged between yesterday and today. It was no longer the grand wedding of the season, it was something else entirely. Intimate, fragile, electric. Savannah sat alone in the bride's chamber, the train of her second gown fanned across the floor, like a question yet to be asked. There was no music, no chatter, just the soft hum of a neural interface beside her, projecting fragments of text and flickers of memory onto a floating screen. She wasn't reading vows, she was writing them. In real time, the software, an experimental interface from Enuma's unpublished archive, was designed to write emotion-responsive content based on audience biofeedback. It tracked everything: pupil dilation, heart rate, micro-reactions. But Savannah didn't feed it flowers and poems. She fed it Zion's childhood diary. Every entry, every crayon drawing he had ever uploaded to his memory cloud. Every bedtime story he responded to with tears. Every voice note she had ever sent him in hiding, pretending to be a guardian angel instead of a mother. The AI processed it all, and then, line by line, began to assemble a vow that wasn't about perfection, but presence. Meanwhile, the cathedral swelled with a different kind of tension. The elite guests were still there. African royalty, Silicon Valley founders, fashion house CEOs, but their posture had changed. Less curiosity, more reverence. The scandal had faded into myth. What was left now was story. Humanity. At the altar, Elijah stood in a sharp gray suit, his hands clasped, jaw tense. He wasn't the center anymore, not even close. He knew it, the cameras were not on him. They were watching the aisle, and what they saw was something new. Savannah entered, not alone, but with Zion at her side. He wasn't hidden now, no longer beneath her train. No longer the trembling child. He carried the rings. His shoes clicked proudly on the marble floor. Savannah's gown this time was simpler. No sensors. No lace engineered for surveillance. But stitched delicately into the back of the dress was a projection fiber, invisible to the eye until activated by movement. As she walked, the fibers lit up behind her, broadcasting moments from her journey. No sound, just images. A shadowy Lagos apartment with rain-soaked windows. the Nairobi co-working space where Enuma was born. A hallway where she kissed Zion's forehead for the first time. A woman's silhouette crying in front of a server tower. A hand placing a baby sock into a drawer. The crowd cried, not from scandal, from resonance. Mothers clutched their chests. Investors sat silently, their ambitions softened by something they hadn't expected to feel. One guest, a reclusive ethicist from Sweden, whispered, "She rewrote the future without lifting a sword." And at the front, Elijah stared, not at Savannah but at Zion. The boy met his gaze, steady, measured, and then turned away. Elijah tried to whisper something as Savannah reached the altar. Maybe a plea, maybe a memory. But she shook her head softly. Not with cruelty, with closure. The officiant began. The air hung thick with stillness. Savannah barely heard the first words. Her eyes flicked to Zion, who handed her the ring box with both hands, cradling it like it held more than metal. The officiant turned to her. "Savannah Thompson, do you take Elijah Blackstone to be?" She held up a hand, paused, then turned not to Elijah, but to Zion. She knelt, gently, gracefully, and whispered just loud enough for the cathedral to hear. "Do you take me, Zion? Do you still want me now that the world knows everything?" The boy blinked, stunned for a moment, then nodded, slowly, deliberately. "Yes, Mummy, always." The officiant didn't interrupt. The crowd didn't stir. Because in that moment, everyone understood. This wasn't about Elijah anymore. It never had been. This wedding wasn't a union of two legacies. It was the end of Savannah's invisibility. The vow was already written, not on paper, but in steps, in scars, in the way she looked at her son and saw not just a child, but the map of who she had become. She stood, turned back to Elijah and said, "You helped me rebuild. For that I'll always be grateful. But this ceremony, this moment, isn't about making things whole. It's about making them honest." Then she removed the ring from the box and placed it in Zion's palm. He handed it to Elijah. No words, just a passing. A quiet gesture of acknowledgement. And then Savannah said it. Not the traditional line, not the rehearsed speech, but something the AI had written from Zion's diary. "I was a mother before I was a name. I was broken before I was beautiful. And I say yes, not to a man, but to the part of me that survived." The room went silent again. The kind of silence that doesn't ask for applause. It asks for reverence. The officiant asks, "Do you take him?" Savannah pauses, then turns to Zion. She didn't say yes to Elijah, not in the way weddings expect, not in the language of rings and ownership and lifelong promises. She said yes to something much larger. Standing beneath the gilded arch of Charleston's oldest cathedral, Savannah lifted her voice, not in a vow, but in a declaration. "This isn't a marriage, it's an unveiling." There was no music cue, no rehearsed script, just the slow, rising sound of silence giving way to understanding. She turned to the crowd, tech moguls, cultural architects, fashion icons, ministers, mothers, and continued. "For years I operated in code, a shadow rewritten to survive. But every system I built was for him," she looked at Zion, "and for children like him. Hidden, precious, watching the world without ever being seen." The room held its breath. At that exact moment, Zion stepped forward. He placed a palm-sized chip on the officiant's podium and tapped a single button. A blue light blinked twice. The cathedral screens flickered to life, revealing the homepage of a newly launched AI framework. Child Code, a sentient companion for the silenced. The project had been his idea. A collaboration between Zion, Savannah, and the core Enuma team. It was built from the digital remnants of Zion's own story, designed as an empathetic AI that could serve children raised in fragmented homes, war zones, refugee camps, or by distant guardians. It used behavioral mirroring, emotional pattern mapping, and story-based healing to help children feel seen, even when they weren't. The homepage tagline read, "Because every invisible child deserves to be known." The audience burst into applause. Not because of the tech, but because of the truth. Later that week, the fashion house that designed Savannah's first AI wedding gown released a mini-documentary titled The Fabric That Knew Her. It chronicled the journey of the dress, from concept to cathedral, and included the infamous moment when Zion emerged beneath the train. But instead of scandal, the footage was framed with grace. Commentary from child psychologists, designers, and poets accompanied the imagery. The narrative shifted. What once would have been tabloid gossip became a global case study in digital storytelling, maternal invisibility, and the ethics of encoded emotion. Savannah didn't hide anymore. Her face was now featured on the cover of Time. The headline read, "The Architect of Feeling: How Savannah Thompson Redefined Intelligence." They named her Cultural Technologist of the Year, but the most unexpected change came from Elijah. He didn't fight it, didn't contest the spotlight. At a press dinner days after the ceremony, he issued a statement. "My greatest contribution to this era wasn't a platform or a protocol. It was stepping aside when a better system arrived." He returned to the Southern Coast quietly, where he began building an emotional sustainability incubator named after his sister, the Sloan Initiative. No press, no cameras, just a man learning to listen. Back in Lagos, Savannah returned to her mansion, not as a fugitive of history, but its author. Anuma's servers surged with new global requests. Universities asked for her lectures. Youth collectives adopted child code as part of their curriculum. And then, something quietly poetic happened. A flower delivery arrived at her gate. Unmarked except for the card. "You won." See Clara, the former rival. The Lagos girl who once leaked her secrets, only to disappear under her own shame. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a full stop. A closing of the file. Savannah held the card to her chest, her eyes flickering with something that wasn't anger anymore. Just history. Around the same time, the Whisper Network disbanded. No press release. No farewell gala. Just an empty password-protected site that now redirected to child code. It was Amandla Visser who made the call. She wrote Savannah a brief final message. "When you surpass the mission dissolves. Good luck, my dear, don't become what we were." Savannah replied with a single sentence. "I've finally become what I am." And yet, just as she began to breathe in the quiet, another ripple came. Late one night, after putting Zion to bed, she sat in her study sorting through encrypted mail from new investors. One folder was flagged red, not for spam but priority. The address was unfamiliar. American, East Coast. She opened it. Inside was a plain text email. Subject: Hello. Body: I saw the summit. He looks like me, but you look like strength. Can I meet him? Victor, the Nigerian-American tech consultant who vanished before Zion was born. The one she'd buried in memory, convinced he had chosen ambition over blood. Savannah's fingers hovered over the reply key. Because this wasn't just about reunion, it was about whether Zion's future would expand or fracture. She closed the laptop, went upstairs, watched her son sleep. In the glow of the nightlight, he looked peaceful, unbothered, whole. But still, she whispered to the air, maybe one day, an email arrives. Zion's father wants to meet him. The voice memo played just before dawn, when Savannah's eyes were half closed and Lagos still whispered in shadows. "Savannah, it's me? I saw the video. I'm ready." That voice, calm, deep, familiar in a way that twisted time itself. Victor, Zion's biological father, the man who vanished 5 years ago, leaving behind a voicemail about a contract in San Francisco and an unfinished cup of hibiscus tea. He hadn't been erased. He had stepped back. Out of fear. Out of loyalty. The last time Savannah saw him, she was 5 months pregnant, sitting on the edge of their bed in Abuja, cradling an ultrasound image. He had paced the room, mumbling something about a data leak, about Sloan Blackstone, about a threat bigger than their child. And then he was gone. Now he was in Ghana. Not hiding, but building. She found him outside Accra, in a converted cocoa warehouse turned innovation hub. He was designing wearable devices for neurodivergent children, sensorial clothing that calmed anxiety through subtle shifts in temperature and vibration. His company was growing quietly. Investors were circling. And still he lived simply. A rooftop meeting was arranged. At sunset. No cameras, no press. Just the two of them and the weight of what wasn't said. Victor wore a linen shirt, sleeves rolled, palms open. Savannah wore black, her armor of clarity. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She asked only one question. "Why did you disappear?" Victor took a long breath. The horizon behind him glowed gold. "Sloane called me. She said your code had become dangerous. That you were being watched. If I stayed, I'd be leverage. So I left. I thought I was protecting you." Savannah stared unmoved. "You didn't even say goodbye." He nodded. Guilty. Solid. "I didn't know what to say that wouldn't make it worse." They stood in silence. Then Savannah reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded photo. Zion, age 3, drawing circuits in the sand. She handed it to him. "He's brilliant, stubborn, curious, like you." Victor held the photo like it might shatter. His lips parted but no words came. "He's not a secret anymore," Savannah said. "But he's still mine to protect." Victor looked up. "I don't want to claim him. I want to meet him, if that's allowed." Savannah studied him. Not the boy she remembered, not the ghost she'd feared. Just a man, carrying guilt, yes, but also grace. The next day, in a garden cafe in OSU, Zion sat across from his biological father for the first time. Awkward, then sweet. Victor didn't ask for hugs. Didn't force words. He brought a holographic projector shaped like a marble and tapped it gently. A light sculpture emerged, animated birds made from code, fluttering in the air between them. Zion's eyes lit up. "Did you build that?" he asked. Victor smiled. "Want to see how it works?" They spent hours sketching creatures and animating them into movement. Zion drew a lion with a broken leg that healed mid-leap. Victor drew a mother tree whose roots pulsed like a heartbeat. Savannah watched from a bench nearby, heart both bursting and bruised. That night, Zion asked a question no AI could answer. "Can I have two dads if I don't call one of them that?" Savannah replied softly. "You can have two truths, and choose how to hold them." Victor didn't overstep. He promised to stay close, but quiet. A presence, not a disruption. Before flying back to Accra, he left a box for Savannah. Inside, a pair of tiny shoes, hand-stitched, embedded with microsensors that track temperature and emotion. The tag read, "So he always feels safe." Savannah touched the shoes and realized something she hadn't before. Forgiveness was not an act of surrender. It was an architecture, a design, one she could now build. She sent Victor a message. "You don't need to be perfect, just present." That same evening, back in Lagos, she returned to the Enuma studio to record a new protocol, a language processing model based on Zion's voice. The system pulsed with warmth. The code sang. As she shut down the terminal, her smartwatch buzzed. A new notification. No subject line. Just a name. Afrofuture Peace Prize nomination. Savannah Amari Thompson. She stared at the screen, motionless. This prize wasn't for code. It was for cultural restoration. For impact beyond the machine. For humanity whispered through wire. She looked out the window, where Zion played in the courtyard, guiding a flock of AI-generated butterflies through the Lagos dusk. She smiled. And for the first time since Lagos fell apart, she whispered back to the night. "We're here now, all of us." Savannah gets one final notification. "You've been nominated for the Afrofuture Peace Prize." The room was quiet. Just a single lamp, a soft hum from a cooling fan, and a microphone waiting patiently in front of Zion Thompson, now 9 years old, shoulders straighter, voice deeper, eyes carrying galaxies he'd inherited without ever asking for them. He clicked record. "Hello, my name is Zion Amari Thompson. This is my first podcast. It's called The Legacy Tapes. And this episode is titled, How My Mother Changed AI Without Saying a Word. He took a breath. Outside the glass studio, Lagos moved at its usual pace. Cars swerving, traders shouting, the scent of suya drifting through the courtyard. Inside, Zion began to speak. People ask me all the time, was it weird being raised by an algorithm? But I wasn't. I was raised by love. A quiet kind. A love that lived inside bedtime audio files and pixelated birthday messages. My mother didn't hug me every day, but she watched me sleep, from a continent away. She coded lullabies. She mapped my emotions like architects map cities. She protected me with silence. And then, gently, the episode unfolded. Zion spoke not just as a son, but as a voice for all the children raised in the margins of ambition and survival. For every woman who had to choose between visibility and protection, between building something eternal and being seen doing it. Savannah's name had become legend by then, but she never embraced it with ego. After the Peace Prize nomination, Savannah quietly launched the Mother Code Sanctuary, a Pan-African refuge for women in tech who were facing ethical persecution, data theft, or identity erasure. It wasn't glamorous. There were no gala dinners, just soft beds, encrypted networks, and real safety. She never asked to be called ma'am. Most called her Auntie Sava. Enuma, now fully open source, had been downloaded by over 4 million African students in less than a year. It was no longer a company. It was a movement, a curriculum, a mirror. Zion, still in primary school, coded his first AI companion on the same interface his mother had once used in exile. He named it Echo. Echo didn't answer questions. It asked them. It taught children how to listen, deeply, emotionally, digitally. Elijah Blackstone sent postcards once a year. No addresses, just coordinates. Notes scribbled in fountain pen. Always signed, keep building. No more claims. No more drama. Just distance and dignity. Clara, Savannah's old rival from Lagos, emerged years later as a guest speaker at an Enuma retreat in Rwanda. She spoke candidly about envy, mistakes, and the cost of chasing relevance. She and Savannah didn't become friends. They became something rarer, women who saw each other clearly and kept moving. There were no more weddings. No grand declarations. Just moments. Zion and Savannah planting neem trees behind the sanctuary. Zion crying when his AI glitched, and Savannah holding him until his shoulders stopped shaking. Savannah dancing barefoot at midnight, remembering her mother's kitchen, letting music live inside her again. And now, here he was, recording the legacy tapes. This is for the mothers who had to disappear to survive. For the daughters who spoke only through code. For the women who weren't called founders because they founded people, not platforms. He paused. And then, with a breath so soft it barely moved the air. Mum, I hope I made your silence worth it. He reached forward and tapped stop. The screen blinked, recording saved. Later, that episode would be streamed in 51 countries. Played in university halls, women's shelters, and robotics classrooms. It would be archived in the Afrofuturist Institute's permanent collection. But that night, Zion didn't care about downloads. He walked outside. Savannah sat on the steps reading. He climbed into her lap, too big now, but still needing her warmth. Did you finish it? She asked. He nodded. Did you say what you wanted to say? He nodded again. She kissed his temple and whispered, You've already said enough. Above them, the Lagos sky turned purple. Below, the sanctuary lights flickered one by one into gold. There was no need for more. No headlines, no algorithms, just legacy. And love, and the sound of stories finding their home. Just a closing screen. Some stories aren't scandals. They're code. What would you have done if you were Savannah? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We read every one. If this story moved you, make sure to hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next billionaire drama. It only gets deeper from here. And don't forget to share this video with someone who loves powerful, emotional storytelling.